The blood on his hands wouldn't wash away. David scrubbed frantically at the kitchen sink, his wedding ring clinking against the porcelain as tears blurred his vision. Behind him, 5-year-old Emma clutched her teddy bear, watching silently from the doorway while baby James wailed from his crib down the hall. The hospital had sent David home with his children but without their mother. Now he stood alone, wondering how he'd raise 2 kids when he couldn't even wash away the evidence of the car accident that had changed everything in an instant. If you're feeling moved by David's story already, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to follow his journey. This is a story about the depths of love, sacrifice, and finding strength when it seems impossible. David hadn't slept in 3 days. The funeral arrangements, the endless parade of sympathetic visitors, the paperwork, it all blurred together in a haze of grief. But the children needed to be fed, changed, comforted. They needed normalcy when nothing would ever be normal again. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming back?" Emma asked that night, her small face serious in the glow of her nightlight. David sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the truth crushing his chest. How do you tell a 5-year-old that forever means forever? That the goodnight kisses and morning pancakes from her mother were now memories, not promises? "Sweetheart," he began, his voice cracking. "Remember how we talked about heaven? Mommy's there now, watching over us like the brightest star in the sky." Emma's bottom lip trembled. "But I want her here." "Me too, baby. Me too." He pulled her close, feeling her tears soak through his shirt. In the nursery, James began to cry again, as if on cue. David closed his eyes briefly, gathering strength. "Let's go check on your brother together, okay?" The first months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and impossible days. David's advertising job allowed him to work from home, but conference calls with crying babies and deadlines met during 3 a.m. feedings pushed him to his limits. His mother-in-law helped when she could, but her own grief made extended visits difficult. One morning, David found himself staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed man looking back. He hadn't shaved in weeks. Couldn't remember his last proper meal. On the counter lay Sarah's hairbrush, still containing strands of her chestnut hair. He couldn't bring himself to move it. "I can't do this," he whispered to her ghost. "I don't know how." From the kitchen came the sound of breaking glass, followed by Emma's frightened cry. David rushed out to find her standing amid the shards of a photo frame, Sarah's smiling face looking up from the broken glass. "I just wanted to see Mommy," Emma sobbed. David scooped her up, checking for cuts. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's just glass. We can fix it." "Can we fix Mommy too?" The question pierced his heart. "No, honey. But we can keep her here." He touched Emma's chest, right over her heart. "And we can make her proud by being brave, just like she was." That night, after both children were finally asleep, David made a decision. He pulled out a notebook and began to write, everything he remembered about Sarah, every story, every habit, every dream she'd had for their children. They might grow up without her physical presence, but he would ensure they knew their mother's spirit. 6 months after the accident, David's boss called him into the office for the talk. His performance had been slipping. Clients were complaining. The company needed reliability, not excuses. "I understand you're going through a difficult time," his boss said, not quite meeting his eyes, "but business is business." David thought of the mortgage, the medical bills still arriving from Sarah's final days, the childcare costs that ate half his salary. "I need this job," he said simply. "My kids need this job. Then I suggest you find a way to make it work." That night, after tucking the children in, David sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills and budget spreadsheets. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how he arranged them. Something had to give. He sold the second car first. Then Sarah's jewelry, all except her wedding ring, which he kept in a small box on his nightstand. He downsized their home, moving to a smaller apartment closer to a good public school for Emma. Each sacrifice felt like losing another piece of their old life, but the children's needs came first. Always first. James took his first steps on the anniversary of Sarah's death. David had taken the day off, planning a quiet visit to the cemetery with both children. But as he was getting them ready, James pulled himself up on the coffee table and took 3 wobbly steps toward his father before tumbling onto the carpet with a giggle. David burst into tears, joy and grief tangled together in his chest. He scooped up his son, spinning him around while Emma clapped and jumped. "Sarah, did you see that?" he whispered toward the ceiling. "Did you see our boy?" At the cemetery later, David placed fresh flowers on the grave while Emma carefully arranged a drawing she'd made of their family, including a smiling figure she explained was Mommy in heaven. "I think she's happy, Daddy," Emma said, slipping her small hand into his. "She's smiling in my picture." David squeezed her hand. "I think you're right, sweetheart." The rhythm of their days gradually found a new normal. David learned to braid Emma's hair for school, though never as neatly as Sarah had done. He mastered the art of one-handed cooking while holding a fussy James. He became expert at stretching groceries to last until payday and finding free weekend activities that made the children smile. When Emma started first grade, her teacher called David in for a conference. He arrived worried, exhausted from a night of teething with James. "Mr. Collins," the teacher began, "I wanted to talk to you about Emma's family drawing." She slid a paper across the desk. Emma had drawn their family, herself, James, David, and a bright yellow star in the sky labeled Mommy. She told the class her mother is a star who watches over them, the teacher continued. Some of the children were confused. "I thought you should know." David studied the drawing, emotion tightening his throat. "Her mother died when Emma was 5. That's how we talk about it, that she's watching from heaven, like a star." The teacher's expression softened. "I had no idea. Emma seems so adjusted." "She has her moments," David said. "We all do. But we're finding our way." What the teacher couldn't see were the nights David spent sitting outside Emma's room, listening to her whisper conversations with her mother's photograph. Or the mornings when James would point to Sarah's picture and say, "Mama," with questioning eyes that broke David's heart anew. When David's company downsized the following year, he found himself unemployed with 2 growing children and dwindling savings. The severance package would cover 3 months of expenses if they were careful. After countless applications and interviews that led nowhere, David made another difficult decision. He sold their apartment and moved them to his hometown, a small place he'd left eagerly at 18, never planning to return. His parents had passed years ago, but housing was affordable, and a childhood friend offered him work at his construction company. "I don't know the first thing about construction," David admitted. "You'll learn," his friend said. "And the hours work with school schedules. Bring the kids by any time." The physical labor was a shock to David's system after years at a desk. He came home with aching muscles and calloused hands, but there was something satisfying about creating tangible things. And true to his word, his friend was flexible when school events or childhood illnesses required David's presence. Emma struggled with the move at first, missing her friends and familiar surroundings. "I hate it here," she declared after her first week at the new school. "Nobody understands about Mommy." David sat beside her on her bed. "What don't they understand?" "Lily said her grandpa died and they put him in the ground, so he can't be a star. She said I was lying." Emma's voice wavered. "Am I lying, Daddy? Is Mommy really just in the ground?" David chose his words carefully. "Your mother's body is buried, yes. But who she really was, her love, her spirit, all the things that made her special, those things can't be buried. Those things are everywhere. In our memories, in the sky, in you and James." Emma considered this. "So we're both right?" "Yes, sweetheart. There are many ways to understand big things like death. Your way is beautiful. As the children grew, David found himself navigating new challenges. Emma entered her pre-teen years with questions about womanhood that left him floundering. He enlisted the help of Sarah's sister for some conversations, but faced others head-on, researching and preparing as if for the most important presentation of his life. "Dad, this is so embarrassing," Emma groaned when he brought home books about puberty. "Probably," he agreed. "But we'll get through it together." James, now in elementary school, was struggling with reading. The school suggested testing, which revealed dyslexia. The recommended tutoring wasn't covered by their insurance and cost more than David could afford. So he learned to be a tutor himself, spending evenings at the kitchen table with specialized workbooks and infinite patience. "We're not in a race," he told James when frustration brought tears. "We're just finding your path." Dating wasn't even on David's radar until Emma brought it up one evening while he was helping her with homework. "Mia's mom got married again last year," she said casually. "Her new stepdad is taking them to Disney World." David looked up from the math problem they were solving. "That's nice. Don't you ever get lonely, Dad?" The question caught him off guard. "I have you and James. How could I be lonely?" Emma rolled her eyes in that new way that made her look startlingly like her mother. "That's not the same. Don't you want someone to love? Like, a girlfriend?" The truth was complicated. There had been a few coffee dates over the years, arranged by well-meaning friends. Each one had felt like a betrayal, though he knew Sarah would have wanted him to find happiness again. "Maybe someday," he told Emma. "But right now, our family is perfect just as it is." That night, he took out the box containing Sarah's wedding ring, opening it for the first time in years. "The kids are getting so big," he told her silently. "Emma's starting to look like you. James has your laugh." He closed the box, but left it on his bedside table instead of returning it to the drawer. A small step. When Emma turned 13, she asked for a special birthday dinner, just the three of them, with all of Sarah's favorite foods. David spent the day cooking his wife's beloved recipes: lasagna with extra cheese, garlic bread, and chocolate cake with raspberry filling. As they ate, Emma asked questions about her mother, what music she liked, whether she was good at math, if she'd been afraid of spiders like Emma was. "She was terrified of spiders," David laughed. "Once, she woke me at midnight to rescue her from one in the bathroom. It was tiny, but she stood on the toilet seat screaming until I got it." The children giggled, delighted by this glimpse of their mother as a real person with fears and flaws. "Tell us more stories, Dad," James begged. So David did. He told them about meeting Sarah in college, about their first apartment with the leaky faucet, about how she'd cried happy tears when each of them was born. With each story, Sarah seemed to fill the room a little more, present in their laughter and in the familiar foods. Later, after James had gone to bed, Emma lingered in the kitchen, helping David clean up. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "I found something in the attic when I was looking for the Christmas decorations last year." She disappeared to her room and returned with a dusty shoebox. Inside were dozens of sealed envelopes, each labeled with a date and a name, Emma or James. David's breath caught. He'd forgotten about these, the letters Sarah had written during her pregnancy with James, when complications had first suggested the possibility that she might not survive. Letters for birthdays, graduations, first heartbreaks, weddings, moments she feared she might miss. "These are from your mother," he said softly. "She wrote them, just in case." Emma's eyes widened. "Can I read mine?" David checked the dates. "There's one for your 13th birthday. That's next week." On Emma's birthday, after cake with friends and presents, David handed her the envelope marked, "Emma, 13th birthday." She took it to her room, emerging an hour later with red-rimmed eyes but a peaceful expression. "She knew me," Emma said wonderingly. She knew I'd love art and worry about my hair and fight with you about my curfew. David smiled. She was your mother. Of course she knew you. She said you'd probably be too strict and too worried all the time. Emma gave him a knowing look. She was right. She usually was. As the years passed, David continued to build their life brick by brick. He started his own small construction company, specializing in renovations that allowed elderly residents to stay in their homes safely. The flexible schedule let him coach James's baseball team and attend Emma's art shows. When Emma was accepted to art school with a partial scholarship, David sold the vintage motorcycle he'd been restoring in his spare time to help cover the remaining tuition. "Dad, you love that bike," Emma protested. "I love you more," he said simply. "Besides, I can always find another project." The day he drove Emma to college was one of the hardest since Sarah's death. As they unloaded her belongings into the tiny dorm room, David fought back the urge to load everything back into the car and take her home where he could protect her. "You've got your pepper spray?" he asked for the third time. "And you know to call if." "Dad." Emma cut him off with a hug. "I'll be fine. You taught me everything I need to know." When it was time to leave, she pressed something into his hand, a small wrapped package. "Open it when you get home," she instructed. The drive back was painfully quiet without Emma's music and chatter. James, now 14, sat silently in the passenger seat, already missing his sister. "Just you and me now, buddy," David said, reaching over to ruffle his son's hair. "She'll be back for Thanksgiving," James replied, but he sounded uncertain, as if already feeling the shift in their family dynamic. At home, David unwrapped Emma's gift, a small painting of their family, David, Emma, James, and a beautiful woman with Emma's eyes and smile, her form slightly transparent, like sunlight through stained glass. Across the bottom, Emma had written, "Always with us." David hung it in the living room, where it became the centerpiece of their home. With Emma away at college, David focused on helping James navigate high school. Despite the tutoring and accommodations for his dyslexia, academics remained challenging. But James had discovered a talent for working with his hands, spending hours in the garage workshop David had set up, creating intricate wooden models and furniture. "You've got a gift, son," David told him, examining a chess set James had carved. "Your mother would be so proud." "Do you think she would mind that I'm not good at school?" James asked, vulnerability in his eyes. "Your mother valued kindness and hard work above all else," David assured him. "And you have both in spades." When James was 16, he came home with a black eye and a suspension notice. David's heart sank as he read the principal's report, "Fighting in the hallway." He called Emma a name, James explained, defiant despite his swollen face. He said she was weird for talking about mom like she's still around. Said our family was messed up. David sat heavily on the couch. "James, you can't solve problems with your fists. You don't understand what it's like." James exploded. "Everyone else has normal families. Moms who show up for stuff. I don't even remember her, Dad. I just pretend I do because it makes you and Emma happy." The outburst hung in the air between them. David felt as if he'd been punched himself. All these years, he'd thought he was keeping Sarah's memory alive for both children, never realizing the burden it placed on James. "I'm sorry," David said finally. "You're right. I don't understand what it's like for you. But I'd like to try." That night, after James had gone to bed, David pulled out the box of Sarah's letters again. There were several for James at different ages. He found one labeled, "For James, when he's angry about my absence," and set it aside. The next morning, he called into work and took James fishing at the lake where David had proposed to Sarah. As they sat side by side, lines cast into the still water, David handed James the letter. "Your mother knew there would be hard days," he said. "She wanted to speak to you directly about them." James stared at the